Continuing on talking about the outcomes associated with prolonged mask usage. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the neurological ramifications because, well, that's the world that I live in, so that's what I find the most interesting and the most applicable to the patients that I see on a day-to-day. So in our first video, which you can find right here, we touched on how prolonged mask usage can lead to something called hypercapnia, which is when you have excessive amounts of carbon dioxide within your blood and how that can then contribute to a number of downstream effects. Well, when it comes to neurological conditions, there are three major consequences that they mention within this article. The first being something that I don't personally deal with too often within my own practice, that being epilepsy and seizure-related activity. They state that the use of masks significantly increases the respiratory rate by about plus 15 to 20%. So why does that matter? Well, because that's exactly how you provoke someone with epilepsy in order to sustain a diagnosis. They state that hyperventilation is known to be used for the provocation in the diagnosis of epilepsy and causes seizure equivalent EEG changes in 80% of patients with generalized epilepsy and up to 28% of focal epileptics. Now, these next two symptoms are what people are often coming to my office with a complaint of, that being headaches and impaired cognition. In a recent study, 343 healthcare providers in New York who were working within the hospital setting during COVID completed an anonymous survey consisting of 21 questions. And they came to the conclusion that wearing masks caused detectable physical adverse effects, such as impaired cognition in 24% of wearers and headaches in 71%. They state that headaches occurred in 15.2% of the participants in under 1 hour of wear, in 30.6% after 1 hour of wear, and in 29.7% when worn for over 3 hours. Thus, the effect intensified with increased usage. Continuing on with headaches, in another study of 158 people, 21 to 35-year-old folks, who were wearing N95 masks, they found that 82% experienced headaches and 34% experienced headaches up to 4 times per day. And they also stated that significantly increased headaches could be observed not only for N95 masks, but also for surgical masks. And just to really drive this point home, in another article of 306 users with an average age of 43 and wearing different types of masks, 51% had an initial headache as a specific symptom related exclusively to increased surgical and or N95 mask use. But what is actually causing this? Because at the beginning of this whole thing, at the office that I was working at the time, we were supplied with N95 masks. And I don't know about you, but I've got a pretty big noggin. And the elastic on those N95 masks were so tight that they would tug on my ears and it would just hurt really bad. I don't remember ever getting a headache or anything like that, I don't think at least. But I do remember when I used a surgical mask for the first time and I was like, oh man, this is so much nicer. And it had nothing to do with my ability to breathe. It was simply how tight the elastic was around my ears. Well, lucky for us, this article actually answered that question. They state that the aforementioned changes also contribute to headaches during prolonged mask use due to a shift towards hypoxia and hypercapnia, so decreased oxygen and increased carbon dioxide. And they also state that stress and mechanical factors, such as the irritation of cervical nerves in the neck and the head area caused by the tight mask straps, led to pressure on those nerves, also contributing to headaches. Who would have thunk it? And get this, they also stated that they were able to detect an association between the N95 mask and headaches. In 6 out of 10 studies, the significant headache appeared in conjunction with the N95 mask. So now, when it comes to cognitive issues, I find this one really interesting. In 2020, a group of researchers found that significantly impaired thinking and impaired concentration were found for all mask types, whether it was fabric, surgical, or N95 mask after only 100 minutes of use. And they correlated that with a significant drop in oxygen saturation during mask usage. And they state that confusion, disorientation, and even drowsiness and reduced motoric abilities, as in your ability to move, with reduced activity and overall impaired performance as a result of mask use have been documented in other studies. So for me, this immediately makes me ponder on situations like in the OR. Surgeons can sometimes be in the OR for very extended periods of time. So if prolonged mask usage can lead to impaired cognition, confusion, disorientation, and even a reduction in their abilities to move about, are we going to look back 20 years from now and laugh at the fact that surgeons wore these pieces of cloth over their face for so long? I've never had to have any surgical procedures performed personally, except for getting my wisdom teeth extracted. But I'd have to imagine that anyone that would be responsible for opening me up, I'd want that person to be operating on all cylinders. They didn't go into any objective measurements within this article, but even assuming it's, let's say, 5% reduction in your cognitive abilities, there are a lot of high stakes jobs out there that are required to wear a mask, and in a perfect world, you would want to be performed by someone who's at the top of their game. With that being said, will we have advancements that are maybe not available to us today that can, for example, maintain the sterile environment of the OR suite without requiring the surgeon to wear a mask? I mean, I guess we kind of do already have that technology with robotic technology, but I don't know. Hopefully we live long enough to find out. These are just things that make you go,